Hello and welcome to Comically Incompetent. My name is Doug.
And I'm Ben.
And we have a couple orders of business to get to before we start getting into our, not hero, but villain this week. First off, we are on YouTube now. We don't have video, but you can see our bright and smiling faces on YouTube. All past episodes are already up, and all future episodes will go up to YouTube, as well as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Podbean. And also, I don't think we've ever strictly said it, but new episodes every Monday morning at 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time.
Hey,
so
Doug.
whatever that... What was that?
Hey, can I do the thing, Doug?
You can do the thing.
Hey, be sure to mash that subscribe button.
Yep, don't forget to like and subscribe. I want you to punch that bell, smash that subscribe button right into the ground.
Just like the Hulk would, or Abomination.
Or our villain this week. Ben, you want to go into it?
Ooh, good segue. This week, we are going to be talking about Cain Marko, the Juggernaut, who is one of my favorite XMen villains. I'm not going to go villains overall, but as far as XMen ones, this guy is awesome. Oh my gosh.
Can I say the thing? Can I say the thing?
You can say the thing, Doug.
I'm the Juggernaut.
Oh, it's so cool. Oh my god. I love that line so much.
It's a classic line for, like, I guess a hero that's not a big part of, like, the media side of it, of the X-Men. That's a really famous line still.
Yeah, seriously, especially for being not a very speaking, active kind of character, you know, like he's more of an towering behemoth presence in the background, and that one line, oh my gosh. So what are you drinking along with our Juggernaut today?
So I have a beer called Shatter Spike. It's from Unsung Brewing Company. We've actually done a beer from Unsung Brewing Company before on the Penguin episode, where we drank Bowtie.
That was a good beer.
Which was very good. So this is Shatter Spike. It's an IPA with Citra and Mosaic hops. So I'll get into a little more of that at the end of the show.
All right. So starting off with what this fellow looks like. If you guys have not seen any comic books or movies with this character before, this guy is a behemoth. He is towering over 9 feet tall. He's like 2,000 pounds, which is slightly larger than some of the largest humans. I don't know if people knew that. He's behemothly muscular and large. He's, you know, the closest thing I can think of is like he's a Humvee of a human, like an H2. He is a big boy.
Traditionally, I've never heard someone compare someone to the size of a Hummer before.
But it's accurate, dude. I'd take this guy in a fight versus a Hummer any day.
Oh, of course.
So he traditionally wears a red jumpsuit with a really thick metal red helmet made of I'm going to air quotes, like mystical metal. So depending on iteration, we don't usually find out what this helmet is. Like it's conjured, essentially, which we'll get into as we go on. As I always do, I forget to mention early on that this is a Marvel character. I really should move that in my thing and put that below the appearance. But yeah, he's a Marvel character. He first came out in July of 1965. And this is another real classic one. He was created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, which if you've been listening to the episodes or you know about comic books, you know there's a really good chance that those two people created any Marvel character, especially from before the 70s.
The classic heroes, I feel like.
Yeah, the real classics, your Captain Americas, your Juggernauts, most of the main X-Men, et cetera, et cetera. Throw Gil Kane in there, too. He's another kind of in that category. Yeah. So I think one of the things that I've always wanted to talk about is this character, because I think this character is actually pretty darn popular, and I think a lot of people actually know very little about him. Because he's in the Deadpool 2 movie, and then when we were younger, he was in X3.
X-Men The Last Stand.
Yeah, not the best X-Men, but he was pretty good in it. It was a pretty good interpretation of Juggernaut.
Yeah, it wasn't bad.
So everybody that has seen those movies knows him, and they're, you know, like the slogan you threw out there, like everybody knows he's the unstoppable force versus a movable object kind of thing. He's running through walls, he can do anything. But you'd actually be surprised how much of this character's background people don't know. Or I maybe not you would be surprised, but there's a lot going on in this guy's life. So to start off, Cain Marko, his father got married, had a child, parents got separated, and then his father, just for clarification, I'm going to use the name Marko a lot. Traditionally in the comic books, when not being called the Juggernaut, this character is just called Marko. It's his last name. So Marko's father married Charles Xavier's mother after she became a widow. That's a gender neutral term, right? Like, there's not
Yeah,
like a...
I think so.
Okay. I'm never sure about that, because I feel like whenever you hear widow, because you hear like widower, yada, 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 whatever. So essentially, his dad married Charles Xavier's mom. Marco's dad was not a nice dude. He would routinely beat his son Kane, and then Kane would then take out that frustration on Xavier, and he would beat Xavier, because they all moved in together at, I believe, it was at Marco's dad's mansion. He was a very, very famous, successful man. Charles Xavier's mom and dad, I believe, were both scientists, so, well-to-do in an English manner. So his father died one day when Kane and Dr. Marco got in a fight in his laboratory. They knocked over some chemicals, and they burned down the house. In, one of his loving fatherly moves, Dr. Marco did manage to get both Kane and Xavier out of the house. Because, he wasn't awful. He just wasn't a great dad,
Yeah.
But he died in the fire. Very, very sad. It kind of destroyed Marco, even though he didn't have the best relationship with his father. It really hit him. He left for home as soon as he got 18 and became a mercenary, soldier for hire, fighting around the world. The way this is generally described as sometime later, which I'm going to throw in the air quotes because I don't know if they exactly give like a strict date to it. It might have been like different issue of a comic book. This might have been a flashback. Marco and Xavier get stationed in the same platoon in Korea. So they were both in the U.S. Army. Kind of different purposes in the Army. Xavier was much more of like a leader doing research kind of thing. Kane was, as you might expect from the way this character goes, kind of more or less a killing machine. What are you going to do? So they get in this crazy fight I believe in like a jungle in Korea. Like just the stereotypical awful existence, friends dying left and right, like nobody's doing well, they're dug into trenches and just not a good time. That was kind of that was a dark point in the comic books. Occasionally you get these moments where you're like, ooh, Jesus. Like,
it gets dark.
With that. But, it makes sense. Character was made in the 60s. That was kind of I believe Korean War was in the 60s, right? Wasn't like 63 to like 67 or something like that. I don't remember exact years.
Books, interestingly, always kind of, I felt like were a good way of like staying with the times, and they were very political in a lot of ways too. Kind of showing what was happening in the world, drawing these parallels for the characters are kind of going through the same situations that we were. I mean, I think the best example is Captain America. A lot of these kinds of like comic books can sometimes, and without even knowing it, can be propaganda.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
I mean, I think that was something they did very well in, just as a quick segue, in Captain America 1, is they show Captain America as a propaganda piece in Captain America. And I was like, oh, that's like a very meta way to explain the character, because that's the character's origins, is he was like a propaganda piece to like bolster American pride, but also to like kind of unify people. It was neat. I like when they do stuff like that, but that's where a little bit of this guy's story comes in, as we were, dealing with the Korean conflict at that time. Yeah, so in this horrible situation, Marco became a deserter and he fled to a cave. In that cave, he found the Temple of Sidorak, which I don't know, have you heard anything about Sidorak?
I've never actually heard of that, which is interesting. I
Yeah,
feel like I
so
would have maybe.
It's something you hear kind of a little bit here and there. It's not like a huge plot of most characters, but a lot of characters have like one comic run where they might come into contact with it. Juggernaut, it's a huge thing about him, which will kind of go. So in that temple, he found a crystal, and there was an inscription below the crystal that said, "Whosoever touches this gem shall possess the power of the crimson bands of Sidorak." That's very cryptic. And
sounds very Thor-esque.
It is. It actually kind of is pretty Thor-esque, and I'll kind of draw the comparisons.
Okay.
So he grabs the crystal, and he immediately turns into the unstoppable force, the Juggernaut. Two things that I find interesting about this is going to go back to those, like, I'm surprised how popular he is for people not knowing certain things about him. So what I find very interesting is that he is a mystic character. He's not a mutant. Even though you always see him in the X-Men and adjacent to the X-Men stuff, technically speaking, he's not a mutant. He's more akin to like an Iron Fist, like any of those characters. Doctor Strange He's a mystical character, and just like I feel like that never got brought up because it's super mucky to bring that up in like an X-Men movie. It's like, but technically not a mutant, you know?
Yeah, it's the same thing's gonna have to happen when they, because I feel like they wrote that out when they had him in X-Men Last Stand, and I'm assuming Deadpool 2 as well. But they're gonna have to kind of do the same thing with Scarlet Witch, being that she's a mutant in the comics. And
Yeah, that's another great example.
Yeah.
Is Scarlet Witch, and Quicksilver for them. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
he's dead in the MCU, but I think that's going to be a segue that they're gonna like branch the two using Scarlet Witch, I believe.
Yeah, which that's interesting. I actually didn't know that about the Juggernaut.
Yeah, it's pretty weird. And as we get into what it means to be a champion of Cyttorak or the Juggernaut, we'll kind of get even more into like, oh, this is getting weirder. The second thing that I found important about that whole situation is that it clarifies there that the Juggernaut is not an individual person. The Juggernaut is also a role or like a job. So much like Green Lantern or Ghost Rider, there have been multiple Juggernauts before. Probably will be more Juggernauts in the future, because that's your Cyttorak's champion and warlord, essentially, is what the Juggernaut is. But again, for the purpose of this episode, we'll clarify, we're talking about Kane Marco. We're not talking about the role of the Juggernaut, but it's an interesting little thing, little tidbit there.
Yeah, Kane Marco's the only one that I know of, so I didn't actually know that it was like a mantle, because I'd only ever seen the Kane Marco one, so I just assumed.
Yeah, I don't think they've ever in cinema or animation had a different like champion of Cyttorak Juggernaut. I think it's only been in the comic books. I'm not certain about though.
Yeah, definitely not in film, but possibly in animation, because I mean, I'll get into this later, but Juggernaut's been a part of different television shows since the 80s.
Yeah, he's kind of always been one of the popular, as we'll go into, really Brotherhood members is what most people know him as. So, time to play our favorite game. That's my like kind of brief tutorial. He's got a billion stories. Like if you look through the comic books or movies, this guy's been a part of like every group. He's been through space. He's been through time. Like he's been everywhere. So I'll focus on that as being his traditional origin story. So Doug, we're gonna play. What's this guy do? What's he doing?
So I know that when he starts running, like head down running, nothing can stop him. Like he just breaks through walls, no matter like I feel like I'm not gonna say no matter what they're made of, but like I feel like he could knock down like a good like 99% of walls once he puts his head down, and starts going. Like just picks up speed, and he's just unstoppable.
Yeah, and he even has had some times that he ran so fast. This is a benefit of the helmet. He ran so fast and slammed into something that he ended up hurting himself more than the other thing.
Oh wow.
Yeah, but he'll go through it. He won't be stopped. I'm a big fan of that like old expression, what happens when an unstoppable force hits an immovable object, and I'm like, oh, this guy's the unstoppable force. So yeah, he definitely once he gets going, there is nothing that is stopping this guy. That's kind of that's his marquee move, is running through stuff real good.
Yeah, which you see in the film versions, that's his thing. And then also I'm gonna say, superhuman strength.
Superhuman strength. Would you guess approximately how strong is this guy on a scale of what we might know, who we can compare him to?
I mean, I'm gonna say he's like stronger than Captain America, but not as strong as like a Hulk.
So his strength is varied a little bit. The gimmick behind that is being the champion of Cyttorak, you're kind of bound to his will, and he can make you stronger or weaker. So like if he's not doing what he wants, he'll make the Juggernaut weaker as like a punishment. But it is at his strongest in a full charge, he has a strength level of 100 on like the Marvel scale, which is strong as the Hulk. But that's when he's like at his maximum going speed. Like in a normal hand-to-hand fight, he'd get smashed by the Hulk.
Yeah, last week you said Abomination was a 100 on the Marvel scale.
Yes, Abomination is 100. This guy at a full speed is 100. And then Hulk is averagely at 100, but his strength scales with as angry as he gets. So if he's super ticked off, the Hulk's above.
Okay.
He breaks the scale, which feels appropriate for the Hulk.
Yeah.
Okay, what else do you think this guy got?
I'm going to say, I feel like we were going to say speed and agility, but no agility. I'm going to say superhuman speed, just because of the fact that I feel like once he starts running fast. but I don't think agility because he can't control if he's going to go left or right. He just has to go in a straight line from that point on. So I'm going to say speed.
Bingo. That's actually an incredibly good way to describe Guy, because there's been a lot of comic iterations where the way he ended up getting like damaged or defeated is he was bull rushing at somebody and somebody, slightly swayed him to the side and he slams into the side of an oil tanker or a ship or something that he has a little harder time going through. So that actually is an incredibly good way that you described that.
Oh, thanks.
Hey, good job, kid. Good job.
What do I win?
You win another guess. There's a couple more out here, but here I'll say I have two more what I called powers. One of which I think you can get, one of which you probably won't get, and then some weaknesses.
Whew.
Yeah, I know. I gave you the easiest hints in the world, didn't I?
I feel like some sort of like
one of them's often applied to like other characters. It's another one of those like, oh, he's good at this.
Yeah. Well, I was actually gonna say, thinking to like some of what we've seen in the films, some sort of like health regeneration, because I mean he takes some hits, but he's like, or not health regeneration, maybe like durability, superhuman like durability.
He's pretty darn durable. He's pretty hard to hurt. He is a reasonably good fighter. He's not, I'm not going to put him in the category where you have like master fighters, like he's not up there with like Black Widow or Captain America, but he was a military combatant. He was both a mercenary and he was in, the U.S. Army. So he's a formidable fighter.
Okay.
Then as far as one that I just don't think you're going to guess, because this goes into that category of like things people didn't know about the character. Traditionally in the comics, he's actually able to summon and desummon his armor at will. So his armor's mystical. Kind of like Green Lantern. You know how Green Lantern's able to summon his armor?
Yeah, green suit.
Yeah, exactly. It's a CGI red suit. Don't make the suit red.
Green.
Well, this guy's.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. So he's able to mystically summon his armor, which, due to its mystic nature, is incredibly durable. Like, it can take bullets. It can take... So, I mean, he himself is tough, but he also has this added benefit of this... I'm gonna use, like, the nerdiest term. Nigh impenetrable armor.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's pretty darn impressive. All right, let's go to some of our weaknesses.
I'm going to say that thing that I said before, like he can't change direction. Like once he starts going, he can't stop.
That is accurate. He has trouble with control, which I think is a very good continuation of the character, because Kane Marco, just as a human, had trouble with control. And even when he gets these superpowers, it kind of bleeds into that, the lack of control.
Yeah.
Let's see. A couple of these I've kind of brought up already, so I'll skip through them. So... if he doesn't act in accordance with Cyttorak's commands, he can be drained of his power. So that's like, I consider that a weakness because he's kind of bound to do this guy's will.
Yeah.
And then because he's a mystic character and he has mystic armor, he's weak to some mystic forces. So like he's been damaged by like Mjolnir. He can get damaged by like Iron Fist, his chi.
Yeah.
So he's weak to some mystic forces. But given that he often fights mutants tend to not really have mystic forces, so it tends to not be too much of a weakness in those.
Yeah.
And then this one, I'm going to give you a hint. The last thing that I consider a great weakness of his, this goes back to his youth of who he was living with. Good hint.
I don't know.
His stepbrother.
Who's his stepbrother?
Charles Xavier.
Oh, wait, you said that. Oh, I was paying attention.
Dude, I was totally paying attention. Yeah, without his helmet on, he's very susceptible to being mentally, I don't know if like controlled, but manipulated. Yeah, like mentally manipulated. He's not the strongest mentally. That sounds so mean. He's not very bright, but he has. What was that?
I was gonna say, so he's got like a Magneto helmet kind of thing.
Yeah, basically his role fills the same as a Magneto helmet. I was debating giving that as the other guess, as I was going to be like, it's a reference to Magneto in what was that, First Class?
Yeah, First Class, where he gets the helmet.
Yeah, where he makes the whole point. He's like, "You can't read my mind now, Charles."
Yeah, so they're half brothers. I didn't know that.
Step. So there's no blood relation.
Oh.
Yeah, it's Kane Marco's mother died, and Charles Xavier's, or no. Kane Marco's mother and father separated. Charles Xavier's dad died, and then Charles Xavier's mother married Marco's dad. There we go.
I remember you explained that now. I don't know where I was mentally at that point, but I get it
well,
now.
I kept just throwing out Xavier, so maybe, like, I don't know, 2 and 2 didn't click in there. But yeah, so, surprise, surprise. Yeah, he's Charles Xavier's stepbrother. I used to have the hardest time with that when I was growing up, differentiating step and half-brother and stuff like that. Yeah. I don't know why. Like, but I had the hardest time with that.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to now just kind of go briefly through some of the common alliances he's part of, who he interacts with, things like that. As everyone might guess, fights the X-Men a lot. He's kind of one of the recurring villains, particularly of Charles Xavier. I know in kind of current cinema and stuff, everyone throws out Magneto as being the primary antagonist to Charles Xavier. I think Magneto still is. However, Juggernaut does not get enough credit for the interactions that he has with Charles. I mean, after all, stepbrothers.
Yeah.
So he tends to interact with the X-Men a lot, usually as a villain, through the Brotherhood, who I know we were talking about earlier. For people that are unfamiliar, the Brotherhood is like Magneto, Pyro, Sabretooth, Mystique, at some points like Nightcrawler, like all of the villain mutants that we grew up to know and love to hate. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
And then Cyttorak also has other forces. He has like armies, essentially. And he's the champion and warlord of Cyttorak. So anytime he goes to space, which does happen, again, I'm not going to bring that into it because it gets super mucky. It's one of those, like with Green Lantern, where I was like, listen, he's in space sometimes. Listen, Kane Marco goes to space sometimes. Like, well, what are we going to do?
I mean, because I feel like the bulk of the people, at least who have seen the X-Men movies, would never, ever have put that together. Because in the movies that you see him in X-Men Last Stand and Deadpool 2, like, that's that vibe of him going to space or being mystical in any way is never really given off.
Yeah, they really kind of ignore it. And you know what? It's one of those, like when we were talking about like how to tackle like campiness and stuff in movies, you'd need an entire Juggernaut movie just to explain his backstory. And I don't know if that would sell as well as giving like a solo movie, the 8th solo movie to Wolverine or whatever. So it's like, I don't necessarily blame them so much for not going into it. I wish they did. But God, it would have been so much to go into to get this whole backstory in there. And then
that's its own movie pretty much at that point.
Yeah, and it's going to have to be a whole reboot, because they have shown Xavier and his story in like Days of Future Past and First Class and all that stuff now. And so I'm like, okay, so there's no way it's getting into that iteration. Like that makes no sense for what it is now. But maybe in the next iteration when they eventually get brought into the MCU, might be a lot to bring in all the X-Men and like all the Brotherhood, but it's a chance. I'm not gonna throw it to the wayside yet.
Yeah.
Now this one I actually had a little harder time trying to find a comparison for of who this guy's like, because it's like I say every week. The healthiest thing we can do is compare everything, both physically and by attributes, to everything else we possibly can, rigorously.
We're going to put that on a shirt for you one time.
Oh my gosh, that's going to be awesome. I'd wear a shirt that says that. Oh, dude, I'd probably get like eggs thrown at me or something. You're ruining the world. Yeah, but I had a really hard time with this guy. I'm going to be honest, because there's no one quite exactly like him. The best iteration I could think of, I'm sure there's better ones out there, but the best one I could think of was Solomon Grundy, who I don't know if are you familiar with Solomon Grundy? He's a Superman.
Yeah, it's a DC villain. I only know of him because of the game Injustice. You can fight as him.
Oh yeah, he's pretty fun in that game. Yeah, so Solomon Grundy is brought back from the dead, essentially a zombie, but is like a large, not as large and scary as the Hulk, but kind of more akin to like Juggernaut as far as strength level and things like that. Similar size. Kind of the best comparison I could find. Kind of I don't want to call it a brainless brute because that's kind of mean. but I think I'm allowed to be mean to comic book villain characters. So yeah, I'm going to go with that one. Kind of a brainless brute.
Yeah, that's fine.
There's probably going to be some Solomon Grundy fan that's like super pissed off that I just said that he was a brainless brute. And then the other one, this one's a little more akin to where he comes from, but he's kind of the similar and opposite of Colossus. You know, for every bit of rage that Marco has, Colossus has... Oh, man, it's going to sound so stupid. I was going to say elegance and grace. That sounds so stupid. But, you know, essentially, he's the core tenet of a monster, and I feel like Colossus is the core tenet of something that looks like it could be a monster, but actually ends up being a very nice guy, which might have that one coming up.
It's Juggernaut's filled with hate, Colossus is filled with love, which we see in Deadpool. In the Deadpool movies, he wants to love and wants the best out of everybody.
Oh yeah, dude, I love that. I love that iteration so much. Yeah, it's got both of them too. Yeah, so I'm, you know, for people that are familiar with Kane and Marco, they'll probably be familiar with Colossus, and so I was like, hey, that's a pretty good one.
Yeah, they also fight each other in Deadpool 2.
And it was a great fight. It
was
really
a fun fight.
So, Doug, I'm curious to get your interpretations. Two different interpretations. We're not going to ratings yet, but two different interpretations. How do you like his interpretations in all of the animations and movies that you've seen him in? And then how do you think they compare to now that you know his what be his origin story? But we'll take them separately, because if you immediately go to the origin story, you're like, this doesn't add up.
Yeah, well, I mean, in the film, so we have him in X-Men: The Last Stand, which was 2006, I believe, which was, you know, not everyone's favorite. It was Brett Ratner, the director, and not the best X-Men movie.
I'm going on the record. I'm going on the record. I actually really liked that movie. I get that people didn't like it, but that, except for the scene with Angel where he's scraping his wings off, that will forever scar me.
That or the absolute just carnage of the Dark Phoenix storyline.
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah, that was not great.
Yeah, he was not a bad part. So in that movie, he was played by Vinnie Jones.
Good old Vinnie.
Yeah, did a good job. I think he very well portrayed the Juggernaut. The famous, I'm the Juggernaut, came in that one, which is fantastic.
Fantastic voice for it.
Yeah, he did a good job. But I think the other version, I think most people might agree. If you don't, let me know. If you like the X-Men Last Stand version, let me know. But the Deadpool 2 version, who was a surprise in Deadpool 2, it was never alluded to that he was going to be in it. There was no trailers that he was in. It was a complete surprise when the Juggernaut pops out. The fun thing about this bit of trivia, not a lot of people knew it at the time, and it came out a lot later, that Ryan Reynolds actually provided the voice and facial motion capture for Juggernaut in Deadpool 2.
No way!
Yeah, so it was later revealed that he did that because no one really knew. He was never listed that anyone was playing him, and even on IMDb now, you go and it's not listed anywhere that someone played the Juggernaut.
That's such a Ryan Reynolds move, though. I love that we can get Ryan Reynolds into every single episode of this podcast.
He's a big part of it. I mean,
he's fantastic. I love him. Fantastic movies, too.
Deadpool and Deadpool 2 are both absolutely amazing. And I think that version of the Juggernaut was fantastic. Again, there's never any alluding to the crystal that you were talking about, or what was it, the cider?
Him becoming Cyterax champion.
Cyterax, yeah. There's never any allusion to that. I think that, like what you said, it gets too messy. And unless they do a Juggernaut movie, I don't think that's ever going to be brought up, because that's a half an hour of setup on for a side character they're never going to do.
Yeah, we're not going to probably see this character as a in-depth cinematic character till if there's an after the MCU, like if there's or like if they sell the X-Men to Sony or something, like again, you know, I mean, like we're not seeing it now.
Which I think the interesting thing about these two film iterations that we have is that when Vinnie Jones played the Juggernaut in X-Men: The Last Stand, he's like bodybuilder size. Like, he's a big dude, but I'm not going to say realistic, but like he's a human could be that size. I mean, obviously an actor played him. There was no CGI.
Yeah, it's like Lou Ferrigno playing the Hulk in the television series.
Yeah, but in Deadpool 2, he's massive. He's like 8 feet, 9 feet tall, maybe like 8 feet. I'd say 8 feet tall. huge behemoth.
Yeah, that's
that
much
movie.
more of a comic book interpretation, which
Yeah.
I think is actually there. I think there's some really smart work done there where, you know, in the X3, they more or less just ignore the fact, like they're like, he's a mutant. Like they don't hide anything, you know, because I don't think in Deadpool 2 they expressly say like, this is Juggernaut the mutant or whatever. So maybe you could give some illusion that he actually is this mystical creature or what have you.
Yeah.
But I think the size difference in that is something that I really liked, because it's cool that he's like this large bodybuilder sized human, but the Juggernaut's so much bigger than that. Like this is like a Hulk sized person.
Yeah.
Like
and Deadpool 2. Yeah, Deadpool 2 did a better job of that. But as far as animated, the character Juggernaut appeared in the 1990s X-Men animated series, which is fantastic. He was voiced by Rick Bennett, which I figured out why I thought half-brother. In that show, his Charles Xavier is his half-brother.
Oh, interesting. Maybe
So
maybe that was more like a more connectable story than being stepbrothers to be half-brothers or something like that.
Possibly. Maybe just easier to explain why they're both mutants.
Maybe that
he's a
explains
mutant
why you're
in that show.
confused.
It definitely explains why I'm confused. But Juggernaut only was in 3 episodes of that show, which I know that show ran a lot longer than... I think it ran for a few seasons.
Was he really only in 3 episodes of that show?
Yeah, he was in
I
the
would
episode
not have guessed that.
The Unstoppable Juggernaut, Phoenix Saga Part 3, and Juggernaut Returns. So he's the main...
I could see how he could be in those episodes.
Yeah, he's the main villain in 2 episodes. He also appeared in the 1990s Fantastic Four animated series, X-Men Evolutions, Wolverine and the X-Men, Black Panther TV series, just a bunch of stuff. I mean, he's not as like common as a lot of villains, but he's a good part of a lot of these different animated series. And we also have him in a couple of video games, which is I think interesting. He's actually in a lot more video games than he is in anything else.
Seriously?
Yeah, he's in the X-Men arcade game. He's in X-Men for Sega Genesis. He's in Capcom's X-Men Children of the Atom, X-Men The Next Dimension, X2, Wolverine's Revenge, just a bunch of different things he shows up in. And just pop culture in general. I mean, I feel like that phrase, like, that we keep saying that I'm going to have to bleep out. Do you want to say it? You haven't gotten to say it yet.
Are you talking about, I'm the Juggernaut?
Yeah, I'm going to have to bleep it, but it's going to be good. That's like a very famous phrase. I think that kind of hit pop culture, whether you know comic books or movies or not. I feel like at some point or another you've heard that phrase. I think one of the most
he's very
famous...
much so one of those characters where I'm sure the first time they introduced him, they're like, oh, okay, we're going to have like this big behemoth-y guy. And then it just took off, you know? Because he fills such a good void. Like anytime you need a strength contest, it's like, all right, here we are, throw the Juggernaut in there. Like going to Deadpool 2. It's like, okay, so we have Colossus. We've established him as like being part of this X-Force tag, essentially. Or like we've got Colossus joining this X-Force situation with Deadpool. Like, well, who are you going to put against Colossus? And it's like, well, you can throw Juggernaut in there. I mean, that's a great villain for Steel Man to fight, you know?
Yeah, I think the stars aligned on that one because I think they reference it in the movie, but I think a lot of it came down to rights. So I think it was who do you have the rights to, and then from that small list, who can fight Colossus? And I think the stars aligned, and those two connected right at Juggernaut. So I think that worked out really well because I think Juggernaut was a really cool part of that movie. I mean, I was very excited. I remember seeing that in theaters when then Juggernaut pops out of the train after that, or not the train, the truck.
Yeah.
In Deadpool 2, and I was like
oh
my god.
Well, because you hear about him for you probably hear about him for like 45 minutes on screen before you finally hear him. You know, like you got the kid like feeding him. He gives him like his pudding or something like that, or gives him mashed potatoes or something. Like,
yeah, they call him like the Beast or something for the first part of the movie.
Yeah, like they're just kind of like they're talking around it, and there's like, you know, like I was saying, there's like 30, 45-minute period where you're like, oh man, like what do you think's in there? And like once you get out, you're like, oh my god, it's the Juggernaut.
Yeah, but I don't think any iteration that I've seen at least goes into I keep forgetting the Cyrax. The Cyrax crystal. I don't think any version. The films definitely don't go into it at all.
Oh yeah, not even a little bit. There may have been something in some animated made-for-TV movie or something like that, but not anything that I've seen outside of the comic books really gets into the nitty-gritty of what he is as a character.
But the last thing I want to say about his television appearance, which is my favorite thing, he appears in the Ultimate Spider-Man series, voiced by Kevin Richardson. And there is a point in that series where Juggernaut is seen robbing a bank until he's defeated by Squirrel Girl's army.
Oh my god.
And I really, really want to do an episode on Squirrel Girl, but I love that phrasing that the Juggernaut was taken down by squirrels.
Oh, that one's definitely going to be coming up, because that Squirrel Girl is also in that category of, like, when I was thinking up this podcast, these characters that, like, a lot of people have heard the name thrown around, kind of like, you know, like Miss Marvel, Squirrel Girl, like those kind of like pop culture ones.
Yeah.
Mark Spector. I was like, she's definitely on the list of characters I'm excited to do an episode about.
Yeah, and apparently she can defeat the Juggernaut.
Well, she can defeat anyone.
That's true.
She is. You don't mess with squirrels, dude. You do not mess with squirrels.
But as far as I'd say is in media, Deadpool 2 is my favorite iteration of the Juggernaut.
I'd agree with that. He's mine as well. And I think part of it is how well he fit with the other characters in that.
Yeah.
You know, because he's a
totally
very serious. He's, you know, kind of like that Colossus, like very serious, focused character. And then you throw him against Deadpool, who's just an idiot. Like, I love Deadpool, but like, oh my gosh. Deadpool's lovely. It's a fantastic iteration too. Yeah, that I agree. That one's definitely mine. So let's go to our scale here, Doug. So
beautiful.
We're gonna break it up into two again, because I think the 2 works best. We're gonna go comicals out of 10. How many for the film iterations in general, and then how many comicals for the comic book character as a separate entity? I'll say.
I'm gonna say for the comic book iteration, I'm gonna say like a 7.5, because that's not low. Again, we say it every time, but
that's a legitimate 7.5 out of 10. That's 75% of the way up a scale. Yeah. Yeah.
But I'd say as far as the film versions, Deadpool 2 definitely pulls it up, and the phrase in X-Men Last Stand just definitely pulls up there. I'm going to say, like, I'm not much higher. I mean, barely anything higher. I'm going to give it an 8.
Okay. I'm going to go pretty similar. I'm going to give it, on the comic book side, I'm going to give it an 8.5, which I know is immediately going to seem incredibly high. For anyone that does not know, I'm a really big fan of mystical characters in the Marvel Universe. Like, Iron Fist is either tied for or like my favorite hero in the Marvel Universe. Obviously, the MCU iteration was not the best, but I love mystical characters, and so this guy gets an 8 just off of the fact that he is a solid mystical character, and he fills a lot of good roles in different movies, cartoons, comic books. Like, you know, he's kind of like the Abomination, where I was like, oh, you need to put a big, strong guy in there? Boom, here you go.
Yeah.
As for the film, I think I'm going to go 8.5 on the film. I think I'd probably do like a 7.5 for the X3 version and like an 8.5 for the Deadpool 2 version. Because, oh, dude, that fight with Colossus was awesome.
Yeah, that's fair. I'll agree with that.
That's one of my favorite live-action comic book hero fights. Because it's a cool fight, but it's also goofy.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So yeah, those are mine. So Doug, now that we've had a little time to marinate on it, let's get a little beer review. How'd that beer go over there?
Yeah, so again, it's called Shatter Spike. I picked it because Juggernaut shatters things.
Oh, I get it. I thought it was because he's spiky. He's
No,
not spiky.
He's not spiky. But it's really good. It's an Indian Pale Ale with Citra and Mosaic hops, which is very, very good. It's a slightly bitter IPA, but like it's got the very fruity because the Citra hops, kind of very citrusy IPA. It's very, very good. It's from Unsung Brewing Company, who we've talked about before. We are big fans. They are in Anaheim. They have a tasting room in Anaheim, which is in Southern California, for anyone who doesn't know, in Orange County, and a production brew house somewhere in Tustin. It's their secret base. So the reason we love them here on Comically Incompetent is because they're a comic book based brewing company. They get all their inspiration out of the comic books. The founder was a huge Spider-Man fan, and when he created the brewery, he wanted the beers to have a comic book vibe and feel and inspiration. So their secret base, their HQ, is in Tustin, which is again Orange County in Southern California. Somewhere, they're not saying, but the tasting room is in Anaheim, which anyone who's not from Southern California knows Anaheim as the birthplace of Disneyland. So a pretty big area in Orange County. The beer is amazing. I'd highly recommend it. I wouldn't say, in my opinion, as good as Bowtie from the Penguin episode, but still very, very good. It's a 7.2 alcohol by volume. And the beer profile on the can, I'm going to read it word for word, is with a burst of Citra and Mosaic hop flavor, Shatterspike takes no prisoners. Once its arsenal of aroma has sunk into your palate, you'll find it nearly impossible to escape. And I love that because I feel like that is the same thing with Juggernaut. Once he starts going, you're going to find it nearly impossible to stop him. And I did not rehearse that. That came out way more eloquent than I expected it to.
Dude, that was buttery smooth. That was Mosaic hops smooth.
I didn't expect that to come out as well as it did.
Yeah, I was enthralled. I was like, oh my God. I gotta get down there again.
It's fantastic, and once the world goes back to normal, we're gonna go to Unsung. I also want to reach out to them, maybe see what because they're fantastic, and a comic book based brewing would work really well with a comic book based podcast.
Oh yeah, it's like perfect. And I love that story so much. I mean, we started this because we're fans of the media or medium or whatever, however you want to say it. Making a podcast about it, they started their brewing with that kind of as their inspiration, and I think it's just really cool to see. Follow your dreams. Don't let your dreams be dreams, kids.
So as far as Comically's on the beer, I know you don't have it because there's no way for you to get it, but I got it from Windsor Home Brewing in Costa Mesa, which is another city in Southern California in Orange County. I'm going to give it an 8.5 Comically's out of 10, which
good.
I believe is right under. I think I gave Bowtie a 9.
Bowtie was incredible. Again,
it was incredible.
I can't speak on this one, but Bowtie was incredible.
Yeah, this one is very, very good. Very, very close. It's just, I think something about Bowtie just put a little bit higher, but this is still a very, very good beer.
Well, that's good to hear.
So, well, I think that wraps up for Juggernaut this week.
Yeah, I had a good time talking about the big red monster.
Yeah, last little tangent. He's not even red in X-Men The Last Stand, in X3.
Oh, he's like brown, isn't he?
He's got like a grayish
or
helmet.
Like gray.
He's wearing,
yeah, it's very dull.
Yeah, he's like shirtless with some straps. A nice little strappy thing.
I never realized how weird that is that he's not red in that movie.
Yeah, not at all.
I mean, obviously the character is not red, but like his helmet's red, his armor's red. Yeah, but that's a good point. I didn't think about that. Yeah. I'm now furious.
So you guys can also reach out to us at our Twitter at ComicallyPod or on Instagram ComicallyPod. And do not forget, we are now on YouTube. If YouTube is the way that you normally listen to podcasts, then you can listen to ours on YouTube now. All past episodes are up, and future episodes will be going up to YouTube as well. And do not forget, we have new episodes every single Monday at 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So please listen, share with friends, family, whoever you think would enjoy our podcast. Please share with them.
And keep staying safe out there, everybody.
Yes.
Keep staying safe. So that was Comically Incompetent Podcast. I'm Ben.
And I'm Doug.
And thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.